My name is Ayman Haddad. I'm the managing partner of DHR International in the Middle East and Africa region. I have over 25 years of experience in the US, Europe, and the Middle East. I've been advising family groups for the last 10 years in Lebanon and the Gulf. And I currently sit on many boards of family firms in the UAE, Lebanon, and Saudi Arabia. Throughout my career, I also advised public sector organizations, sovereign wealth funds, and private equity firms. And I had the chance to co-found the GCC Board of Directors Institute, currently based in Bahrain, covering the GCC countries and helping in raising corporate governance standards across that region. I have a master's in computer engineering. It can always be cured, so I moved on and did an MBA at the Chicago Booth School of Business in the US. I will be the moderator today of this session, Corporate Governance in Family-Owned Businesses, with a distinguished panel of professionals and academicians. And allow me to make few comments and maybe start with a definition. So what is corporate governance? Corporate governance refers to the processes, structures, policies, and laws that govern the management of a company. It also refers to the way the board oversees the operations of a company and about how board members are accountable to the company and its shareholders. The key purpose of corporate governance is to promote accountability, transparency, fairness, disclosure, and responsibility. These are core values that are relevant to the success of all businesses, irrespective of where they come from, family-owned or non-family-owned. Research has proven that companies with sound corporate governance usually perform better than other companies. Good corporate governance results in better access to external capital, lower financing costs, higher credit ratings, and strong investor confidence. As you probably know, family businesses are the backbone of many economies around the world. Their sustainability is critical to global economic growth. Some of the largest companies in the world, including Walmart, Ford, Carrefour, BMW, Samsung, and many others, are family firms. In the Middle East, they account for around 95% of all private sector companies, which is a substantial contribution to the GDP in the region. As such, family firms play a vital role in economic development, not only through their business contribution, but also by creating an investment environment that is open, safe, secure, and transparent. So, why corporate governance is crucial for family firms? Increasing growth, political and economic volatility, and globalization has brought many challenges for family businesses. The way you deal with them can mean the difference between success and failure. Many of these challenges can be tackled by adopting sound corporate governance systems. And I've seen this in many of my clients with an initial situation highly transformed with high shareholder value after corporate governance systems have been implemented. So challenges could be managing growth in a volatile environment, could be succession planning and generational transition, could be preserving family harmony, could be also recruitment, remuneration, and promotion of family and non-family employees, and also last, I would say, but not least, ensuring fairness for both family and non-family members. More and more family-owned businesses in Lebanon are embracing corporate governance to secure their long-term future. Over the past few years, many firms have taken the initiative to formalize policy frameworks and structures for effective governance. Unfortunately, others are still skeptical, hesitant, or on a standby mode. So we will discuss today these issues and more with our panel today. We will start with a presentation by Dr. Sreih on the general framework of corporate governance and its applications. And we will hear from Frederic and Chemaly and Achkar about 2 case studies in Lebanon. Dr. Josiane Fahd Sreih is a full-time associate professor of management in the School of Business at the LAU. She is the founder and currently the director of the Institute of Family and Entrepreneurial Business in the LAU. She holds a PhD from the Sorbonne University and is a fellow member of the Family Firm Institute in the US. She is also a family wealth and a family business consultant and the winner of the 2007 International Award of Family Business. Dr. Sreih, tafadhal.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the presentation. I'm very happy to be here today addressing businessmen, such a distinguished audience, and addressing on a topic that's dear to my heart, which is corporate governance in family businesses. So at LAU, we were pioneers in addressing the topic of corporate governance since the year 2002 in Lebanon and the Middle East. So we played an instrumental role in addressing this topic to help family businesses structure in a proper way as they grow and as their ownership becomes fragmented. So there should be a solution to that, and one of the solutions is addressing corporate governance and creating a corporate governance framework in their family businesses. So as we all know, family businesses in the MENA, they are a substantial, or they constitute a substantial part of the economy. And one of the well-known statistics today is that 95% of family businesses don't make it beyond the 3rd generation. If you look at those percentages, obviously this is alarming. We have 30% of family businesses that make it to the 2nd generation, around 14% that can go beyond the 3rd generation, and 2nd to 3rd, and then only 5% make it beyond the 3rd generation, which is, of course, alarming for family businesses to see that the business might fail beyond the 3rd generation. And there are a lot of sayings that say from rags to riches to rags, or the 1st generation builds, the 2nd generation inherits, and the 3rd generation destroys. And this is actually true when you go around and look at the disasters taking place in family businesses around the region and in Lebanon as well. And part of it, I would relate it to probably ignorance of what to do. I mean, as much as those businesses can be successful strategically, they might get to a point where when they want to go through a succession planning, they might get to a point they think that they don't know. I mean, they don't know what to do, or they do it wrong, in a wrong way, either the succession plan or how they want to manage their business to deal with the challenges of the coming, the coming generation, or the challenges that are coming in the future. So the most common problems that I always encounter when I consult with family businesses, mainly they revolved around the misalignment of a fragmented shareholder base and misalignment of those owners. The family would have started with one owner or a founder of the business, and he was the leader for so many years. And then in the coming generation, he might have 4 kids, let's say. The 4 want to become leaders, the 4 want to become managers, and they lose track of who's going to be the next leader, how things are going to evolve, and what to do. And the second major problem that I see is that there is little segregation between family and business. So, and one of the things is that how can we separate family and business, but at the end they are interrelated because family members are in the business, and as we move home, we are also sitting at the dinner table and discussing business problems. So how can we create that separation, which is very difficult in the eyes of family members? And of course, one of the problems that I see and that is common in most of those businesses is the lack of a common vision. The first thing when we start working with family members is let's sit and agree why do we want to be together and what is our common vision. And then we start developing strategic plans for the future and setting the framework for a corporate governance. But we need to sit together as families, family members, and decide on a common vision for the business and for also the family, decide on common value statements, and then come up with our governance framework to proceed. So the most common problems revolve, as I've seen in the region, revolve around succession planning, around unclear decision and voting rights of family members, unstructured employment and compensation of family members. I've seen struggles around this compensation, how we want to compensate family members. And sometimes the compensation of family members make the non-family members employed in the business leave because of this competition with family members. And they think that they have no place in the business to grow and become probably CEOs or CFOs. Why? Because family members are there, they are better compensated all the time, and they take the leading position in those businesses. So this is one of the major problems that we encounter in family businesses, and of course the limited ability to attract and retain high caliber employees who are non-family, and the disagreement around funding and dividend distribution. This is also another major problem, and there are other problems, but those are the major problems that I have seen during my experience with family businesses. Actually, at LAU on Thursday, for the family network, we are addressing the topic of compensation in family businesses, very specific. So again, I was saying that the distribution of dividends is also another, because different people in the family business have different aspirations and have different, they expect, for instance, to get some dividends for the coming year, whereas other owners would like to reinvest this money in the business, and what to do. I mean, this is also a major problem that might happen. So obviously, one of the solutions when we have those problems, and as the business grows in size, and as the business has fragmented ownership, corporate governance could be the solution. Now, the corporate governance framework cannot be one framework that would fit all organizations, and this should be worked bit by bit with all family members. So what's very important is to mind the process. What is the process that we'll put in place as a family? And of course, if you get the advice of external consultants that will manage the process, how to put that process together, how we're gonna get family members to be involved, because if family members are not involved in the process of governance, you will also have problems. I mean, you will not solve your problems. So as much as you want to structure the business, you want to involve them in accepting the corporate governance framework, because if people trust the system that you want to put in place, then they will follow that system, and you can really have very good results afterwards. So what is corporate governance? I think Mr. Ayman has explained it thoroughly. It is setting the policies. It's a set of rules that define the relationship between stakeholders, management, and the board of directors. And in the case of family businesses, between owners, stakeholders, our shareholders, our owners, our family members. So this is setting the relationship that exists between all of these stakeholders. It has a long-term relationship. It's a long-term relationship which has to deal with checks and balances, incentives for manager, and communication between management and investors. And it's a transactional relationship which involves dealing with authority and disclosure. So corporate governance in family business is having the ability to manage through the boards of directors. So the research have shown that 80% of family businesses have resolved many of their problems by setting a board. We conducted a study a couple of years back at the Institute of Family and Entrepreneurial Business at LAU, and we found out that 75% of businesses operating in Lebanon have boards, but have virtual boards. So those boards, I mean, maybe they come to family members and tell them, well, you have to sign here. We conducted a meeting there, and everyone signs, but then they have problems on the other side. So if we create well-effective or high-performing boards of directors, I think we'll solve 80% of the problems that family businesses pass through. So creating a sound board of directors, I mean, if we look at what's happening in the country, also politically, I always related, we have a problem of governance mainly. I mean, we have board members, if we want to create a parallelism, we have board members where there's no chemistry. I mean, there's no chemistry. How can you work together and achieve results? And this, I mean, if it were in a family business, of course, this will lead to a disaster. So people who are sitting on the board should have chemistry so that they can give results. And this is one of the things that one has to mind. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, but I always relate to the problems that we have, problems of governance. And obviously, if we're talking about corruption, I mean, it doesn't work. Governance, as Mr. Ayman said, transparency and accountability. I mean, it's a system of holding. You have to be transparent in your dealings among stakeholders, shareholders, management, board of directors, and also with the outside. So transparency and and you have to be held accountable. So the board of directors' mission in a family business to have obviously a good corporate governance is to oversee the management of the business. So obviously boards of directors don't interfere in the business, in the day-to-day business. So they have nose in but hands off. So they will look at what's going on, but they will not interfere in the management of the business. And this is the real role of a board of directors. So as we see, governance in family business is a bit different because we don't only structure the business, we also have to structure the family. And the framework that we create in our businesses would relate also to the size of the business. So the size should be taken into consideration and how long the business is in operation or has been in operation, and also what kind of structure, the size of the family also counts, how many family members are owners in the business or future heirs of the business, and how many of them, how we're going to structure also the family, who's going to lead a family council, whether we need to create more structures depending on the size of the family. The family is is large, so here also the governance should also take place at the level of the family. So family council, family assembly, etc. But when we're talking about family councils, this does not mean that what's the role of each one of these, because you'll have entities, family council on one side, board of director on the other, management of the business on the other. So there is a relationship between all of these things. So we'll manage the family in a family council, for example, but the family council will report to the board. And in the board of a family business, obviously, and especially in Lebanon, owners should be on the board because so they will be on boards of directors, and hence they will take into consideration aspirations of the family. But they will not, this doesn't have to interfere with the management of the business or the day-to-day management of the business. This is left to those people who are holding offices or positions in the business. So boards of directors, the significance of corporate governance, we talked about the concept of accountability and transparency, which is very important. People are held accountable. If you are in a position, you should hold the people accountable. And this is one of the main concepts of corporate governance. But how would this apply to a family business when you are the CEO of the business and your brother is not doing his job right? I mean, can I fire him? I mean, those are the questions that revolve, I mean, in a family business. What can we do? I mean, can I fire my brother? What is it that I should be doing? And so that's why in a family business, because you have a brother who's your brother for life, I mean, you cannot fire him, or a sister who's your sister for life, and so on. So working on the family side, when we have a structure in the family or we create a corporate governance framework for the family, we have to mind the unity of the family, and we have to work on this unity. And this unity could be achieved through educational programs. I mean, people should be alert and should know. So educational programs for the family on topics related to family businesses, and at the same time, anything that creates unity in the family will be done, because the more the family is united, and we have conducted studies also at the center at LAU, the more the family is united, the more people among themselves, the different shareholders and owners and stakeholders trust each other, the more the performance of the organization is. So, and also the study involved non-family businesses. When there is trust between management and employees, also the performance, this has, I mean, we found out that also it has a positive relationship and correlation with the performance of those businesses, positive financial performance, better financial performance. So basically, working on trust among family members, and trust among family members is one of the competitive advantages of family businesses. So as you see family businesses that are united, you see that they have a competitive advantage relative to other businesses where they are not united or... who are the board of directors? So this we covered board members. In Lebanon, we usually need to be an owner to be a board member, but this is something that we also presented to change it in Lebanon, because in Lebanon, the CEO and the chairman are one person, but in the best corporate governance practices, those should be two different persons. So we're trying to change that rule in Lebanon, because to have proper corporate governance. And there are many reasons behind. I don't know if you have the time to discuss these reasons, but we'll keep it. I still have 3 minutes. Okay. Again, I mean, the CEO should be a different person, and usually if you are an owner, you can be on the board of directors, but the latest research on corporate governance stipulates that you bring in outside directors, independent, we call them independent directors. And in a family business, this is really a must, because they will bring a flavor of professionalism. And there are ways to do it in Lebanon, because if the independent director is not a family member, he could be an advisor to the board, and then the board can make decisions, or some companies decide to give him ownership in the business, like 1% ownership just to be on the board of directors. I mean, this decision is of course, family members would decide on that, but they could be advisors to the board. And the presence of independent directors on the board would bring a flavor of professionalism to the board of directors, rather than having brothers and sisters only sitting around the table with their father, uncle, etc. You will have professionals, and it will change the tone of the board of directors and will lead to better decisions in some cases. So the size of the board, I mean, we're So there's an optimal size. Many studies were conducted between 5 to 8. I've seen excellent boards working with 12 people on board, but definitely you can achieve or get to a decision when the number is. You want the number to be as large to bring in new perspectives, but also smaller to be able to make decisions. So between 5 and 8, this based on different studies, this is the optimal number. And I'm conducting currently a research on the board size and composition, and we're trying to find a mathematical formula that in which we add factors to it, and then we can get for each company what is the optimal size mathematically between the board size and the composition of the board of directors. But a composition that I see fit is having family members on the board with executives. I mean, in the way it's done here, I don't see it fit, because I don't think that executives in the business should sit on the board. They come and present to the board. They report to the board of directors, but then decisions should be made by board members, where you have representation of the family, the CEO who represents also the business or management, and you have also independent directors on the board of directors. So here, how to apply corporate governance alongside. So you create policies, but when you create policies, and here I say the process should be a good process, because you have to sit with family members, decide on the policies, sit with people who are involved in the business, write those policies, and make sure that everyone accepts the policy. If they accept the system, if they trust the system, then you can, the system will be applied, and you can talk about a sound corporate governance system in your business. So establishing trust is very important. I talked about it. When you trust the system that you put in place, you will work accordingly, and trust among family members in a family business had showed that it increases the performance, the financial performance of the business. So this is research-based, and we have examples of it. So the 5 golden rules, and I will wrap up. I had examples. I will not talk about them for the sake of the other panelists. But the 5 golden rules for corporate governance to ensure success, the first one is ethics. If you have one family member who's not ethical, or one family member who wants to take the share of another one, or one family member who does not believe in an ethical conduct, it's very difficult to work with. So corruption, we know it today, because we're surrounded by examples of corruption. If there is corruption, it's very difficult to put a good corporate governance framework and get people to trust the system. Now, when we look at those successful family businesses, the people are ethical, they follow a code of conduct, and they put a framework, and everybody respects that framework. That's how it works. But having a lack of ethics, and if you see the corporate collapses all over the world, they investigated and they researched them, and all of this, and the reason that was found behind, like Enron or Swiss Air or all those collapses, the reason was a lack of ethics. So ethics is a prerequisite. Aligning business goals. Of course, having a sound strategic management practice that would increase the value to stakeholders, organizing, structuring the business and structuring the family, and of course, having a good reporting relationship to the board, and from the family, the structure that you create in the family to the board as well. I think you will be able to create a perfect corporate governance framework. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Josiane. I think we will have the chance to discuss in more details once the other panelists have made their presentation. We will have enough time for a Q&A session and a discussion around these issues and recommendations. Thank you. We'll open the floor now for an example, a real example, a case study presented by Frederic Chemaly, who is the corporate secretary of Malia Group. He's in charge of establishing the frameworks, advising on and running the following at the group level: governance, risk and compliance. Worked previously as a senior counsel in the corporate secretary of a major regional bank. He was previously also an executive in an oil and gas engineering company in Abu Dhabi. He's a graduate from the St. Joseph University and holds a master's degree in public international law from Paris. He's also a certificate in corporate finance from the University of Sussex in the UK. Frederic.
Okay. Hello, everyone. Back in 2014, Malia Group, they have solicited a major advisor in corporate governance in the region to set up our framework. And 7 months ago, I joined them as a corporate secretary, and we started implementing the recommendations. So I will not address the family governance or shareholders agreements, etc. I will just speak about what is Malia, what is the Sarraf family, corporate governance, and a bit of generational transition principles. So Malia Group was established 79 years ago. It started with a pharmacy in 1936, and then it started developing. As you can see here on this time axis, there was a contract with Wella, then Shiseido, and then it started to develop. It built a pharma line and Cosma line. These are factories for personal care and pharmaceuticals, and then it developed into Iraq. We have now one of the major distribution companies in Iraq. It's called Marid Al-Iraqiyya. We build hotels, and we're in the fashion. So we're in 6 business sectors. We're in industry, consumer goods, solutions, fashion and luxury, contracting, hospitality and real estate. Today we're at 1,700 talents, 25 companies, 60 brands and 35 principals. In the industry, we have Cosma line and Pharma line. These are our 2 major factories for personal care and manufacturing of medicine. We manufacture medicine under license for major companies such as Abbott, GlaxoSmithKline, P&G, Novartis. You've heard of them, all of them. This is our industry. In the consumer goods distribution, we have around 60 representations, mainly Mars, Haribo, Red Bull, British American Tobacco. Just a second. In consumer goods distribution, we have a company here and a company in Iraq. In Iraq, it's one of the top 3 distribution companies. Technology and management solutions, we have Malia Tech, which is the subsidiary for technology. We are partners with Honeywell for the region, Swedex, BeBlue, and others. We have as well Magma, which is our magazine. It is widely distributed. It's about mainly the operations and mainly fashion of Malia Group. We're in fashion and luxury as well. We have a subsidiary called Malia Moda. We are agents of Paul and Shark, and we have a concept store in downtown, which is Malia B. We're in contracting as well. We build hotels. We are building now Magma Square in Erbil. It's a mega project. It's like ABC in Lebanon. We're in hospitality and real estate. We have a day spa, and we have the Erbil Rotana Hotel. This is one of the top hotels in Iraq. So basically, our mission, our Malia Group's purpose is to ensure that through its performance, it continuously excels and exceeds clients' expectations and builds on its considerable reputation as a leader in various sectors. We have the values which are modernity, ambition, leadership, integrity, and ardor. And we always progress. We always work on changing. And now I will talk about governance. This is one of our major milestones this year. Okay. We're present in corporate social responsibility through three channels. We have a Jean and Charlotte Sarah Foundation. We're doing a CSR project at group level and at subsidiaries levels. These are some of our projects that are under development. We're building a hotel, a new headquarters, a logistics company in Iraq, a mega center, this one, which is Magma Square. And we're going to start building in Enfe a mega project. It's going to be a leisure destination. Okay, now we're moving to the family tree. This is how it started with Dr. Jean Sarraf. He's the founder of the group, the pharmacist exactly, first generation. Then the second generation came and took over. There is Mr. Jacques Sarraf and Mr. Ghazi Sarraf. And the third generation are the grandchildren of the founder. So at our company, the third generation, they work inside the company and they have positions inside the company. It's okay. I will move now to corporate governance. I will not define it. It has been already defined, but I will explain it on an organization chart. Why corporate governance is very important. Like, Malia is a big company, and it has internal stakeholders and external stakeholders. In internal stakeholders, there are the shareholders, directors, management, and employees. And external stakeholders, we have suppliers, society, government, creditors, markets, and customers. Any and every one of these stakeholders wants something from this company. Some people need money, some people need power, some people need sustainability. The government needs compliance, for instance. And corporate governance is very important because it has to reconcile all these interests. Corporate governance and value for investors. This is a brief of an IFC study. It says that if a company has a good governance, its price its valuation can go double to a company which has average or no governance. And investors have been asked if they would invest in companies with good governance or average governance, and most of them said that 100% said, in fact, that they would pay a larger governance premium for emerging market companies than for developed market companies. That's another slide that reflects what is very important in governance. And the top important matter is disclosure, because when you have an investor who's coming to inject money in your company, he's going to want to study your company and understand all the insights of your company. And if you don't disclose well the information of your company, he's not going to inject money. So this is the main thing. Disclosure is very, very important. The others are as well very important, like related party transactions. Related party transactions is when somebody inside the company transacts with somebody outside the company and there's a relation between them. This is not prohibited. There are arguments against and arguments for related parties transactions. The principle is that it should be transparently and clearly regulated. As you can see here, board structure and board independence are not very important. It's only 3%. And there is a board process that is not really important. And the separation of chairman and CEOs is moderately important. I will now move to my main my main slide, this is how the corporate governance structure at Malia Group is. So you have the family, who are the share owners. They delegate authority to the board of directors to set the strategy of the group. Once the board of directors sets the strategy of the group, the board will delegate authority to management to realize this strategy. Basically, it's via a business plan. Now, we went downwards, it goes upwards. Management is accountable to the board of directors of the operation of the realization of the target, and the board of directors is accountable to the share owners of their strategy. Now, this is vertical. There is as well a flat split. In our board of directors, we have 3 executives, which are Mr. Sarraf, Mr. Jacques Sarraf, Mr. Ghazi Sarraf, and Ms. Joanne Shahab. They are executives. It means that every one of them handles an executive function inside the company. And we have 4 externals, independent directors. We have 4 external independent directors that are not related to the company. These directors inside the board of directors, they ensure the control of the company because they don't have transaction with this company, so they are fully independent. And these people, they constitute the audit committee, the audit risk and compliance committee, which is basically all the control functions of Malia Group. And the important thing in family-owned businesses is that family who owns and manages a company, they accept being controlled by independent people. This is very important. So let me get back to this. There is an executive management committee, which is a pass-through between the board of directors and management. It's constituted of one person who sits on this board, the CEO, the chief officers, and the managing directors of the subsidiaries. This is how the relay is done between the board of directors and management. So this is basically our structure, and as you can see, internal audit doesn't report to the executives. It doesn't report to the executive management committee, because if the internal audit, who should control operation, if it reports to executives, it will be biased. It will be under the pressure of the executives. And this is how Enron cracked down. And the external audit as well doesn't report to executives. So this is our structure. This structure is really in line with the best practices in corporate governance. Voila. And the nominations committee, briefly, this is a generally accepted committee. Its main function is to study the appointment of senior managers and senior executives of the company. This ensures that every person in a very sensitive position is his profile is well reviewed before being appointed. Okay. So corporate governance, as I showed you here, at the highest level of a company. But how does it affect management inside how does it affect different stakeholders? The shareholders in order to be compliant with governance principles, in fact, the shareholders, they have 2 things they get out of a company: financial dividends and control. So they invest in the company to get a return for shares, and they control the company via voting on the strategy set by the board of directors. Employees are the messengers of a group usually, especially people at front positions in relation with clients. They have to reflect in the market the image of a company. So this is why they have to be up to the best standards. They have to be in line with the culture, the principles, the vision of a company. So they have to comply with a code of ethics that we have internally, that every professional company should have. They have to comply with all these policies and principles, like a conflict of interest policy, like no gifts policy. And they have, I underline the quality reporting. Quality reporting is very important because the decision of the board of directors to set a strategy is based on what is being reported to them by people who are on the ground. Voilà. Donc, this is compliance. This is the major part of governance for employees. Management are the people who translate the strategy as set by the board of directors into operations. So they have the same compliance priorities. Directors usually they come meet 5 or 6 times a year, but this does not mean that they don't do anything. They have the pressure of being compliant to governance principles, to set governance principles, ethics principles, and they have as well to fit with the culture, to fit with the values that are promoted by a company. So they have double requirements. External stakeholders, in order to, like, we're promoting corporate governance inside our company, but we should promote it as well outside of our company, and we have external stakeholders like suppliers and society. In order to promote good governance, we have to choose suppliers and creditors that are up to certain standards, such as banks who don't have any issues with anti-money laundering, and suppliers who respect standards of environment and society and government. So basically the benefits, I will go faster, benefits of corporate governance: when you have a board of directors, it will increase the value because you have people who are dedicated to setting a strategy inside the company. It will increase financial performance because it will give you access to a lower cost, to a lower capital, to a lower cost of capital. It increases leadership because the board of directors' main purpose is to lead the company. As we said about stakeholders, it increases transparency through disclosure of policies, operations, etc. It empowers ethics because the code of ethics usually is approved by the board of directors, the higher authority. It increases the balance inside the company because you have people who control and people who execute. Sustainability, risk, and risk governance. The board addresses risk governance. Now, this is my last note. Usually, when is the perfect time to incorporate corporate governance into family-owned businesses? I think it's between the second and the third generation, or in a clearer way, it's between when brothers and sisters are handing over to cousins, because families grow exponentially, and before you lose your control on a company, when the cousins become a large number, you have to set a structure through which you have to function in a good governance way. Thank you.
Thank you, Frederic. Very exciting. We'll present Joe Achkar. Joe is a board member of the Sabis Holdings. He has been involved in the transition of the network, fourth generation. It's a family-owned business, as you know, to a globally recognized, professionally managed education business. He is now leading the implementation of the corporate and family business governance at the group. Joe has 35 years of international exposure across many markets. He has worked in various industries such as technology, manufacturing, distribution, retail, and obviously education. He holds a master's degree in electrical engineering from Purdue University in the US. Joe, if you can stick to 10 minutes, would be great. Thank you.
This is what I will run through during my presentation, a very brief overview of who Sabis is. Why did we get into governance? Every company has their own reasons, the main driving force to get into governance. How did we implement governance? What were our priorities? The impact that governance had on our own company. And finally, the lessons that we have learned that hopefully others, some of you, may learn from. Very quickly, an overview of Sabis. On the business side, we're a global education and management organization. We've been around for 130 years, since 1886. The network, the Sabis network across the world, spans 16 countries on 4 continents, about 60 schools, 70,000 students, and more than 6,000 employees. Very big. The family side of Sabis, the word Sabis is an acronym from abbreviating 2 names, the Saad and the Bistani families. We are family owned. We currently have the 3rd, 4th, and 5th generations involved in the company. The 5th is at the board level. Our chairperson, our chairwoman, Mrs. Saad, is from the 5th, the 3rd is at the board level. So our chairperson and another person at the board level. 4th generation is actually currently leading and managing the company from the CEO to the vice president and other executives. 5th generation, we have 3 5th generation members who have just started over the last few years, joined the company. So really it's a mix of multiple generations, quite a good case study. There are 4 case studies in which will be mentioned. I think the presentation will be available online and you can check these out online yourself. Why did we get into governance? You've heard from different people why companies do get into governance. For us, the driving force, although we had other reasons and we derived other benefits, but the driving force for us was sustainability. We've been around for over 100 years. The 3rd generation members had the wisdom to say, we want to make sure to put in place the proper framework to allow this company the continuity of this company for another 100 or hundreds of years. So that was the main driving force for us. We did have a couple of additional objectives. One was enabling growth. We were growing at a very rapid pace, and we wanted to have the structure in place to enable that growth, and improving effectiveness and efficiency throughout the organization. But again, in our case, ensuring continuity was the main driving force. How did we go about implementing governance? I think this will remind you of something that Josiane said a little earlier. When we started on the governance journey, because it is a journey, it is not a project. Believe me, anyone who gets into governance will realize it's something that is ongoing. This is what our governance structure looked like. It was one group of family, shareholders, board members, and managers, all into one, meeting around 5 o'clock tea or Sunday lunch and making the strategic decisions of the company. The first objective and the first project we worked on in corporate governance was to split this group into 3 separate and distinct groups. The family and shareholders as one group, the board as another group, and the management team as a 3rd group. Now, some people do belong to the 3 groups. That's fine, as long as the boundaries are clearly defined, and as long as everyone knows what role they're in a certain instance. For instance, when we're at the board members who are also family members or managers behave or have to behave, or as we say, have to put on their board member hats and act accordingly. But once they're back at the company, a manager at the company, an executive at the company, who may be a shareholder and a board member, once he's in his office at the company, they have to behave like an employee. And that is very clear and very clearly stated in our employment policy and our governance structure. So that's the first thing we did. Then again, going back to something that Josiane said, we worked very extensively on defining our core purpose and our core values. I will not go into these. Again, you can find them online on the site. But that is a very important element at the early stages of a governance project or journey. Then I've split the governance umbrella into groups, family governance and corporate governance. On the family governance side, our first priority was the ownership policy. That, very simply put, defines who can own shares, how do you sell or transfer shares, and how do you value shares, very simply put. The actual policy is quite complicated, it's several pages, but these are the simple questions that we try to answer. These are essential because when you move from 2 or 3 or a handful of shareholders to shareholders in the dozens, with in-laws, with children, grandchildren, it is extremely important to decide who and how they handle their shares. The other policy we worked on is the employment policy. Some companies go as far as saying family members cannot work in the company. The New York Times, for instance, is a family company that doesn't allow family members to work at the New York Times. Others just leave it up for grabs. I think it's important to define the rules of engagement for such a thing. For us, the driving force behind any decision is the benefit of the company and not the benefit of the individual family member. And in answering Josiane's question, can you fire your sister? The answer should be an unequivocal yes. If your sister or your brother or your son or your cousin is putting the business at risk, you as the CEO or the board, depending on your governance structure, should have the right and the duty to let go of that value. Again, one of the goals of a proper employment policy is to allow the company to attract and retain good elements, not only family members, but also external non-family members. I move to the corporate governance. First and foremost on corporate governance on everyone's top list is the board of directors. There we had to define the roles, the composition, the structure, how many members. We opted for a range of 7 to 11. We're currently at 9, working well, but we left some leeway between a minimum of 7 and a maximum of 11. How does it operate? What are the committees? You've heard about committees from Frederic and from Josiane. One thing that we found extremely beneficial is what we refer to as the authority matrix. Simply put, this is actually a matrix, a table. It runs several pages long. On the horizontal axis, we have 3 main stakeholders, the shareholders, the board, and the CEO. On the vertical axis, we have the key decisions to be made in strategy, in finance, capital structure, and governance. And we define who decides what. For instance, something may be recommended by the CEO to the board, but the board has to approve it. And when they approve, at what percentage? Is it simple majority, 75% majority, or whatever? So that is a very interesting and crucial building block for the governance structure. Finally, again, mentioned earlier, the management succession. We have very clearly defined the selection and the succession processes for CEO and executives. What has the impact of governance been for us? Again, I'm using a chart that was developed by the IFC. We have worked with the IFC as a case study, and they have been worked with us, again, on a consulting basis. For us, in our case, the major substantial impact happens on two levels, sustainability and board effectiveness. That's aligned with our initial objectives. We had a strong impact on efficiency and management control, so efficiency and effectiveness. We had less impact, moderate to minor impact, on reputation, profitability, and access to capital. You may think this is contradictory with what you heard from Frederic, but it is not. Because in our case, we were not after external capital. We do not have external capital, and for the time being, we are not interested in external capital, hence no impact at that level. In other situations, they may have external stakeholders, external shareholders, and hence that would be a critical element. Lessons learned. The main challenges, time. If you don't have the time to commit to it, don't get into it. Very simple. Buy-in from stakeholders. If you don't have buy-in, especially at the top level, and I mentioned that in a minute, again, don't get into governance. The biggest challenge, and that is the challenge in any change exercise, is old habits die hard. We sit in a room, everybody's there, everybody agrees. From now on, this is exactly how we're going to work. No way we're going to do it as we used to in the past. 3 to 5 minutes after the meeting, half the people are back to doing it the old way. It's practice, stressing, whatever, to make sure that eventually these old habits do die. Commitment at the top is critical, critical key to success. The term that I'm using here, champion, is a term that is used by the IFC. You basically need a project manager for the corporate governance project, someone who loses sleep over corporate governance, basically in a nutshell. Any project, major project that does not have a proper action plan, what, who and when, what are we doing, who will do it, and most importantly, when is the deadline, when is doomed to failure, getting the right support, perseverance, past that. My last slide. The process, we have found out, and you can find that out also in literature about corporate governance, the process of putting in place corporate governance is almost as important as the corporate governance itself. This is why it's important for family members to be involved in the process. You may ask, why is it that important? Very simply, you are sitting around the table, tackling issues that are difficult and that are controversial, that you disagree on amongst yourselves, and then after working through them, you learn that you can get to agreement. That builds a discipline of knowing that we can overcome challenges together as a team. Thank you. Thank you.
What Mr. Achkar mentioned, or Mr. Chemaly, or Josiane, if I may call her Josiane, is beautiful. I think it's great. But we can't really apply and imply that what we are talking about here in this room is going to apply on 85% of the family-owned businesses in Lebanon or in the region, particularly that it needs a lot of comprehension and civics. Civics do play, not only civics, ethics as well do play a major role in setting up companies and keeping them aloft. I would beg of the universities to look into a light corporate governance course to be given to students, whereby they would be given the right direction and through auditors to smaller and companies, medium-sized companies. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Salah. I think it's a question mainly for Dr. Josiane. She said something very important in her presentation. She said one size does not fit all. I think this is where you could maybe elaborate.
I fully agree with Dr. Rustom. Yes, I think that, and what Mr. Ayman is saying, that one size doesn't fit all. So definitely, even, for large-sized company, one size doesn't fit all. But for smaller companies, and I do agree that we cannot apply the same framework that we're applying for large companies. First, the larger companies have the funds, so they don't have a problem, let's say, hiring a consultant, etc. They also can justify these reporting relationships. If they have to hire extra people, so they can afford that. And all those are problems for smaller entities and small and medium-sized companies, which constitute most of Lebanon's private sector. So basically, I do agree with that. But I strongly believe that even smaller companies have to start with a process of governance, maybe not apply the whole framework, but start with writing their policies, because they have certain policies that are probably not officially written or not officially. They have to start by writing employment policies. They have to start by writing and creating a framework. They also have to start by separating between management and family. And I do believe, even if the business is not as large to justify, let's say, inviting independent directors to the board, or you can invite advisors, or probably, but you have to bring to your board, you have to create a board first, and you have to bring to your board a flavor of professionalism, and start by writing certain policies, probably not apply a complete framework of governance, but start that process. And the process of governance, as Joe said, is also a process that you embark on, and it's a continuous process. I cannot say that if we wrote policies for a business today that we are going to stick to those for the end of time. Of course, we're not going to change them, because if you change those policies, they become irrelevant. But after a while, or once you are writing those policies and you get to the application, you have to observe how the application is being done. Like any policies that you put in your business, and then you observe what is the result of that policy, and then adapt it, adjust it, develop it. Because I do believe that, and this is, I'm saying it because of my experience in the field, every 5 years you have to review your governance framework and see what's working, what's not working, what could be challenged, or what could be renewed, etc. Thank you very much.
Let me add something. In small companies, I would tend to think that there are forms of companies that legally do not require a board of directors. And I would tend to think that there is a high likelihood that shareholders are in management as well. So basically, a smaller version of family governance would be to draft a shareholders agreement in which you can set all the rules, regulations, rights, and obligations of all shareholders and management, and get it signed by everyone to abide by it. So this is a smaller version of governance in limited liability companies, for instance.
If I may, very briefly, doing that, I would focus at first on two important elements: ownership, very clearly, very simply deciding who can own shares, can in-laws own shares, Can someone who is not working on in the company own shares? These are, I don't want to say simple, they're difficult questions, but the answer can be very brief. And they're very important for the patriarchs of the families to make these decisions. And a mechanism, we cannot overstress that, a mechanism for deciding and letting go of family members who are hurting the company. In the presence of the patriarchs, these decisions can be made more easily. And there is again, if you go to the website of the IFC, the International Finance Corporation, there is a small handbook that's available in all languages, free of charge, called the IFC Family Governance Handbook. It's small, it's brief, it's to the point, it's a how-to that can be used even by the smallest of companies as a startup.
Yeah, thank you. Just let me add that I should go in your direction as well. I have some experience with smaller businesses who actually harvested a drawback from going into such a process, and Joe mentioned this. If you don't have time, if you don't have commitment, if you don't have the scale, if you don't have any market challenges or any technology disruption for your business, and trying to implement these frameworks, it could be a diversion. It could be not beneficial at some point in time, just to agree with your point. So it's, again, it's not, all sizes do not fit all, and horses for courses, as we say in the UK. Any more questions? Go ahead.
Walid Janadri. This is a question for both the academician and the people on the ground. From a quick investigation, many people that are involved tell you that in the Middle East, not just in Lebanon, a lot of companies are really not ready for engaging into proper governance. You know, what you said, the virtual governance is really the rule, and definitely not accepting the independent opinion of an independent board member. Now, how far are we from making a breakthrough, and what spark is needed in order to really accelerate the move towards proper governance in the Middle East and in Lebanon?
As an educator myself, I believe in education. So I think the more we educate people on the topic, the more you open up their eyes and you make them feel the need for that. And in the way I started my presentation, the percentages are alarming. And looking around you, I mean, all family businesses are in touch with other family businesses. And all family businesses, they know that there are problems. And everyone, maybe if we have family members here in this room, if we go on a one-to-one and ask them, I'm sure they have their own issues, they have their own problems. And many of the times they don't like to unveil them because it's a secret, it's a family, I mean, to preserve, because this also will hit the reputation of the family business. And I do understand that they will not just unveil them. But I am a person who believes in education, and this is why at LAU we created the Family Business Network, which is a second generation, you know, getting all those second generation members to subscribe to the family network. And every month, on a monthly basis, we conduct activities, educational activities. As I said, I mean, we have one on compensation in family businesses that will be held at LAU Solidaire, because we have an office, an executive office in Solidaire, where this time I will be giving, and sometimes we invite people to come over, I'll be giving a presentation on compensation in family businesses. What are the things that we should look at, how we develop those policies for businesses. And every one of the younger generation family member will be talking about their family, how they're adopting this, what is good, what is bad with the latest research. We discuss those things. So through education, through conferences on the topic, and also businesses, in order to minimize the conflict, they decide that they want to go to public markets. And so this is also a drive for them for governance. And based on what they said, there's a study that shows that 18 to 20% increase in the valuation of the companies in the Middle East. In other places it's more, in Asia it's more, when they have a good corporate governance practice. So it will value the company.
What I will do, I will take few questions. I'll take note of the questions so everyone can have the opportunity to debate. I think lady down there.
Good afternoon. My name is Noor Atwi. I'm a public sector employee. So corporate governance is a relatively current issue. It hasn't arisen from a long time before. But there's the all-time agency conflict problem. So how does corporate governance address agency conflict? How does it take precautions so independent directors, when they're invited to the board, they won't work in favor of their own interests? And if such conflicts occurred, what are the measurements taken in order to be solved? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We'll take another question.
Good afternoon. I'm Mohammed Shamas, Social Responsibility Consultant and Trainer. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for this great presentation. My question is for Mr. Frederic Chemaly. I would like to ask you, Frederic, about your presentation 15 minutes ago. You mentioned some example about CSR. Where did you fit this CSR? You make it as generic social responsibility or as strategic social responsibility for Malia Group? Thank you.
Just one second, Frederic.
Hello, Elias Hayek. So I was just wondering, related to the second and third generation for family-owned business. So I actually needed your help and your advice on one thing. Are we supposed, as a second generation and third generation, like graduate and join our family-owned business, or are we supposed to work outside, get some other experience as an employee in other companies and so on? Thank you.
Keith, how would you foster ethics in an unethical environment?
Yeah. Okay, that's.
Thank you.
Okay, so let's start with the question from Nora. She was asking about agency cost. I think. I mean, how do you resolve conflict of interest or vested interest within a board, especially if you have outsiders coming in as independent, non-executive directors? I think maybe Joe have an experience with that, or Frederic. I think your board has non-executive directors as well. How do you resolve potential agency costs or conflicts of interest?
In fact, legally it's a matter of quorum and majority. We have to accept that not everyone would agree on the same topic. So basically, depending on the majority, they could resolve to take decisions. Now, the best is to have everybody on board, but you cannot do it. But this is how it goes.
Yes,
as simple as that.
I think, Nora, your point is about related parties as well. If you're on a board and you have access to specific information, or how do you deal with that? Maybe Josiane.
Yeah, I think, briefly, whenever you want to choose people to be on the board, mainly on boards of directors, there are things that are very important. You have the duty of care and the duty of loyalty. And if those people don't abide by duty of care, duty of loyalty, and there is also a fiduciary responsibility of those people when you put them on board. It's not a lifetime sitting on board. It shouldn't be, actually. And you have to mind those things so that you invite invite them to be on board. And then you, if you look at the latest research in governance, there is an evaluation of the board of directors. And I think this is very important. I haven't seen it practiced in Lebanon nor in the Middle East. Very few, they practice that. But there is an evaluation of the board of directors. You need to evaluate those people. And then, stemming on the, it relates also to the ethics, the question on ethics, because this also relates also to ethics when we're talking about duty of care and duty of loyalty. People should be loyal to the interest of the company and not to their own interest. But answering also ethics, again, it's the choice of the people to be on board, the choice of the independent directors to be on board. But you can also create in your company an ethics committee. When you want to reinforce it, or when the board decides to reinforce ethics, you create an ethics committee, and anything that is unethical should be reported there, and the board of directors should take action. By firing, if we strongly believe that we don't want to have unethical dealings, I mean, anything that happens, so you can do that.
It depends very much on the regulation. Board members are fiduciary obligated, so they are liable. If the company is being sued and there is a claim, the board members will be, these are the measures, I would say, that would be implemented. Now let's move on. We have only a few minutes left to talk a bit about the employees. As a family member, would it be best for you to get exposed to an outside business before you join your family business, yes or no? What are the benefits? I also have an experience in that I'll just mention very briefly, which favors the former, which is to join an external organization. So people will be trained on meritocracy, on works ethics, on hierarchy, and they can bring in these behaviors into the family business and abide by the rules that were set in terms of employment handbook. I mean, you're an employee, you're not a shareholder, so you have to go by the book as any other employee. That would be my own experience. Any Joe?
No, if this is a very debated topic. A lot of companies put a rule of 3 to 5 years minimum of a successful career outside the family business. We have decided not to write it out that categorically. It is encouraged, but it is not that categoric. There are circumstances where joining the family business right away may prove beneficial, but for the person themselves, generally getting recognition outside of the family business gives a lot of self-confidence, besides the advantage to the family business itself.
Great. I think the last question was about CSR, but Fred, if you can link it to corporate governance, because this is a very important topic, but a little bit separate. So let's try to link it to corporate governance.
Basically, CSR is giving back to the community what it has given to you, so it should be strategic.
Yeah, I mean, the link with corporate governance is somehow debatable or limited. Yeah. You mean the number of? In terms of the decision-making process for my, I mean, fine. But let's remember it's a family business, so there must be some kind of understanding on who makes the decision on what. The big question that Josiane raised, I think that needs a different conference. Another conference is about compensation. How do you compensate board members? And some boards have given shares, so they create incentive to the board members to actually, but they cannot actually make the majority, obviously. I mean, this is part of the voting game of any organization, family or non-family business. Thank you very much. Great audience. Great presentations. I'll just leave you with some food for thought. Some questions were raised by my clients. Maybe you can take them back home. Just 4 questions very quickly. Or a pushback. I don't want to give up control. So how do you deal with that? I think related to the question of shareholding. I don't want to share confidential information with outsiders. No, this is my business, my son's business, so nobody should know about it. I have no time to go through the formalities of having a board. I think Joe has covered how do you do it. And it is expensive. Yes, it's expensive. So back to your point, is it cost benefit? Should we do it now? Should we wait? How can it benefit our business? Thank you.